having this experience with a Capricorn rising, I think one thing I've had to recalibrate my brain on is when he's first meeting new people. Yeah, like it seems like he's reserved, but I think he's trying to calibrate and adjust his energy.
Hello, everyone. This is Sarah. And in today's episode, me and Kinsey are going to be talking about why some people literally do not feel seen by astrology.
Yes. So we're going to reshape your brain, reshape how you see astrology, and we're going to focus on the rising sign. So, Sarah, can you tell us a little bit more? I know we talked about it very briefly, but can you give us an in-depth to what is a rising sign?
Yes. So your rising sign at its core, in the least jargony way possible, is the sign that sets up your entire birth chart. So when we think about an astrological birth chart, it has 12 different sections to it that are referred to as houses. In your first house, so the part that sets up everything else, is your rising sign. And not only that, but your rising sign is how people often perceive you before they've even met you. It's kind of like that very like first impression, like that gut check of like, who is this human?
Okay, you are my astrologer. So Sarah, would you like walk us through like kind of like a 10,000 foot level of each sign?
Yes, but I don't want to do it myself. So if you have anything to contribute, I'm ready.
I'm an Aquarius.
So,
I'm born to yap.
you're like, I am ready for the moment, actually. So we will start from the very beginning. We'll start with Aries risings. Aries is initiators. They're bold. They're direct. And I think the other thing I want to say about Aries is there's a beautiful independent streak. Now, you have to be careful with independence, but I also think independence could be a really beautiful thing too. And then next up, speaking about different elements for signs, we have Taurus rising. And when I think about Taurus, it's funny. I almost think about like the opposite. Like my body slows down a little bit. I'm like very grounded, very reliable, very practical.
I totally agree. And as a girly who collects Tauruses like Bunny Fufu,
You do.
They get this like rap for being really strong-willed, like because their sign is like the bull.
Stubborn.
But I think
stubborn's always the word.
Yes. But I also think, that comes into play in a positive way too. Like they're diehards for loyalty and following through. And I hate that they get the bad rap for being lazy. I think they're just selective with how they spend their energy.
Moving on to our next would be Gemini rising. And Gemini, always like the very first words that comes to mind is talkative. They're like super chatty, they're super fun, they're super interactive. But I think what I love the most about Geminis, or at least the Geminis in my life, is they're just like very curious. Like they ask really good questions, and they also tend to not take things too seriously. Like there's like a playful nature to being a Gemini, which I really love too. I don't have a ton of Geminis, but the few I do, like they're very playful. And then up next is Cancer rising. And I don't pick favorites in the zodiac, but there's something about a Cancer that I just love. Like all of my spiritual mentors actually have some sort of Cancer placement in their big threes. Like it just like feels so gooey. Like you just want to lean into these humans. But when I think about Cancer rising, I think of someone who is very nurturing and warm and caring, kind of like that stereotypical like gooey mom archetype, I think would be a good way. Very gentle. And I think with Cancer places too, because I just said, all my favorite spiritual mentors have major Cancer placements. They're very intuitive people, very empathetic people. And there's just something about a healed Cancer energy that does something for me. So up next would be Leo. My lovely daughter has a major Leo placement, and they are also like, I wouldn't say gooey, but they've got that warmth to them. Like my hands immediately come up because I don't want to, there's like, people often call them the performer, and they can perform and they can be expressive and on stage, but it's really more like the expression piece. Like they are going to express themselves, but they're really like charismatic in how they do that. And I think what I love about Leos is Leos have this really beautiful confidence about them. And it doesn't have to be loud and in your face, but there is like a core sense of like a Leo knows who they are. And I really value that in other people.
Absolutely. Like I think of them as like a beautiful sunflower. Like they can stand on their own, and it radiates such energy. Like who looks at a sunflower isn't happy about it? You know what I mean?
And then up next is Virgo rising. So Virgo that we've talked a little bit about before. You know, the sun and the rising give a little bit different flavors. I mean, they're similar, but they're not exactly the same. I feel Virgo risings are much more precise. I feel like that would be a word I would use.
I think Virgos get a rap for being like control freaks and
Hmm.
for whatever reason, people like hone in on them being like clean freaks. But I
Oh,
think you're right.
yes.
I think it's more about being helpful and using their energy and their ability to dedicate energy to being precise and organized and thoughtful.
Up next is Libra rising. Libra is an air sign. And Libra risings, the ones I know in my life, are they're also like they have that charisma about them, kind of like a Leo. They've got the charisma. They can be social. They don't have to be social, though. I guess that's why I hesitate a little bit. They don't have to be like loud and in your face, but they're very diplomatic and graceful. And I really feel like with a Libra rising, what I find the most is you can relate to them. So up next is Scorpio rising. And I think the most beautiful and first word that comes to mind is resilience. There's so much resilience with a Scorpio rising. They can be super insightful and intuitive.
For sure. And as a water sign, I think we need to lean more into the lens that there's just like a depth to them that some of us could
Mhm.
only dream to achieve.
That's a perfect description.
Yeah, yeah, they're just very, very deep. They can talk and get into the emotion much easier. They have access to that in a way
Yeah.
that other signs don't.
And next is Sagittarius rising. Sagittarius is a fire sign. As we've talked about 5 times now, I am a Sagittarius rising. And with Sagittarius rising, there is a lot of optimism. There is a lot of big picture thinking. What I think I love the most about Sagittarius rising is they are honest. Like they're just like blunt about what they want and how they want it and what is going on. And I think there's a lot of adventure with Sagittarius rising. Sagittarians often, myself included, really, really, really love to travel and just like see the things and do all the things. And I think alongside that comes a little restlessness, but being restless doesn't have to be a bad thing either.
No, it's like an invite. They're your people that
Hmm.
invite you
Oh, I'm
to
always inviting you.
Yes, yes, always invitation, no obligation, which I love.
Up next is Capricorn rising. Capricorn being an earth sign. You know, Capricorns are so ambitious. You know, I'm ambitious, so I share that with them. But I think with a Capricorn rising in specific, there's a lot more of like being composed and being very strategic. And I don't know if stoic would be the right word, but they're very much like analyzing the environment. They're like, what is going on here? Where do I fit? How do I make the next chess move sort of vibes?
Yes. My husband is a Capricorn rising. I think he's like 50 shades of earth sign. But I will
All
say,
their sun.
having this experience with a Capricorn rising, I think one thing I've had to recalibrate my brain on is when he's first meeting new people. Yeah, like it seems like he's reserved, but I think he's trying to calibrate and adjust his
Hmm.
energy. And again, he's just selective with how he spends his energy because he's so thoughtful and intentional about his response, what he perceives as his responsibilities. And I do love that. Like he keeps your girl on track.
Yep, keeps everybody in line.
Yes. Yeah.
He knows what the next move is. Like
Yes.
that's a good energy to have. And then up next is Aquarius, which is Kinsey. And there's so much uniqueness to an Aquarius. Like the first time we met in person when you were like huffing it across New Orleans in your dress. I was like, what is happening? It's 1,000 degrees outside. Like, why? Like, how are we here? So, definitely unique in their approach to life and how they view the world, but also very like visionary and intellectual and, you know, maybe a little bit of rebellion in there. I kind of like lean away from rebellion and think more about like innovative, but I think like there's a lot of fun to be had with an Aquarius rising.
As living proof, there is a lot of fun. I often think of myself as like the alien of the zodiac at times, just because everything you see or everything I've seen in mainstream astrology paints us as these like rainbow haired, over the
Oh yeah,
top.
no, you don't have to have a mohawk. Like,
No, no. And I'm like, you can be very plain exteriorly, but I think one thing I love about all Aquariuses that I've interacted with thus far is we're always down to clown. We
mhm.
want to have the conversation and can really be open to new ideas and they kind of take it and run with. So that is a fun energy.
And then last up, I love a Pisces rising. Actually, my friend here was like, I don't want to be a Pisces, but Pisces are it's kind of like the Cancer energy in a way, like with the empathy and the compassion and the softness. And what I think Pisces maybe gets a little extra like flavor or spice of is the creativity. There's so much creativity with a Pisces, and there's just very just like dreamy nature to them. And Pisces are the last sign of the zodiac, so they're kind of the culmination of all the different signs, so they get to like experience the world almost through all the signs as a result of that. So now that you've heard about all the rising signs, and hopefully you know your rising sign, we would love to know how this syncs up for you or how it doesn't. If it doesn't resonate, are there other parts of that zodiac sign that maybe speak to you more than just kind of a couple of words we picked out? Because there are so many words that we could choose to describe every single sign. But we would love to hear back from you guys about what resonated and what didn't.
So, in our next episode, we'll be actually deep diving into breaking down the fear around astrology. So, if this triggered anything in you or made it feel too prescriptive, I think we're going to take a step back and help you unpack why it might feel a little intense.
Yeah, there's definitely, I think it's normal to have a little anxiety around astrology as you're figuring it out and figuring out all the layers. And so I love to break that down for people because I've very much worked through my own anxiety and now have so much fun with astrology all the time.
So, thank you for listening to today's episode, and we will see you next time.
See you soon.